Redditors who are married to Karens, what is it like? Story 1. Not married to a Karen, but married to someone with a Karen for a sister. Sister-in-law is the freaking worst. I hate her more than anything, going out to dinner with her, listening to her order food, and talking to the servers. Holidays are also terrible, and she sends out long lists of expected gifts. She celebrates every holiday and birthday specifically for presents, even when it's not appropriate. The funny thing is, one time I was away from the dinner table when the bill came and the sister-in-law waited for me to return to pay the bill by actually handing it to me. She didn't give it to her sibling, my significant other, or pay her half, but expressly handed it to me to pay. By the way, her husband is an idiot, and they are a match made in heaven. Edit. I'm sorry to disappoint everyone, but yes, I did pay. There are many reasons why, but the biggest one is that it got me out of the restaurant faster. Also, it helped me control the tip. Another time we went to a family brunch where the bill was split, and Karen's sister-in-law waited to see what other people tipped so she could lower the overall tip percentage for the waitress to what the sister-in-law thought was deserving. We didn't stop this until afterward when she bragged about it later on, so no one even knew to stop her. And she's only invited to these family meals because she has 2 children that we want a relationship with, so she has that emotional blackmail card. Story 2. Not married. 4 years of a toxic relationship though. I broke up with her on Monday again. We're kind of financially fucked because of this lockdown, so we're just feeling things out for a month before we decide for sure. This cycle is on repeat. I constantly have to cut her off and speak over her because of the way she treats people. Waiters, sales assistants, gym staff, neighbors, landlords, and randoms we meet in bars, etc. Note, we were both waiters at the beginning of our relationship, so she has worked in the industry but still lacks empathy. She blames the waiters if something is out of stock, etc. My second major issue. We are both English second language teachers. She teaches kindergarten while I teach high school. Now that we're working from home, I hear how she speaks to her students and it really opened up another aspect of her personality that I don't like. She will berate a student for not understanding instead of evaluating her ability to explain. Shitting on a 3-year-old in their second language doesn't fly with me. A lot of her behavior stems from a self-defense mechanism due to insecurity, but that's not an excuse. She doesn't realize how mean she is to people, including myself. I'm a people pleaser that would rather sacrifice my own comfort than someone else's. She expects me to be an asshole to people because I'm a biggish guy with tattoos. I don't exactly look soft. It's toxic as hell. Please help. P.S. This is so good it rivals most easily. Story 3. Early in our marriage, I started seeing some Karen tendencies in my wife. It started because companies were legitimately jerking us around on things we needed, and she was trying to be more assertive. Initially, she had it compartmentalized. She'd turn it on when she needed it and turn it off once things were getting resolved. But she started losing her ability to keep it segmented, and this entitlement mindset started bleeding into other interactions. It never got too bad, but I don't like the direction she was headed. I finally said something one night after she'd gone into a store to return something, and came back to our car telling me how she gave the employee talking about how terrible the return policy was. So I just asked her. An hourly employee with no say in the matter upheld the company policy as she was trained to do, and you thought it was inappropriate to give her a talking to for that? How do you think that made her feel? What would you have done differently if you had her job? Was it worth ruining someone else's day over this? Do you feel better that you made her feel bad or worse? Is that how you want people to remember you? All the while I was circling back to the store, parked the car, and said something to the effect of, I think you owe that woman an apology. I think if you take a minute to think about it, you'll do the right thing. She argued with me for a few minutes because she felt like I was attacking her, but to her credit, she walked herself back into the store and stood for 10 minutes to apologize. That was a turning point for her, I think. Since then, even when people have legitimately screwed up, she's been much more patient, understanding, and polite. I'm grateful she was open to my critique because I have other Karens in my extended family, and I don't know if I could be with someone like that. Story 4. My best friend married a Karen. This woman is on a whole different level from Karen. She makes a large 6-digit salary but has to work cycle shift away from home. She has the option to move from home so they can live as a family but refuses because she has what she calls a career. She sells scents and works a clerk job at an HR office. They have 2 kids and she can't handle them. She makes him drive home from work every day so she can work out for 30 minutes in the evening. It's a 7 hours commute. He had to buy another vehicle because he couldn't take the company vehicle back and forth. So expensive and dangerous. There are too many things. Here are some. When she's working at home, she has to leave the house with her kids and can't come back until she says it's okay. Insane spending habits on unnecessary stuff, Amazon, Scentsy, and other MLM products. Any negative thing that happens in her life are his fault and he has to fix them immediately no matter what the cost. She texts and calls him every 10 minutes at work to complain about him being away from home and how the kids are driving her crazy. She made him buy a luxury camper, $40K, so she can visit him at work, and came one time. She put the kids in daycare even though it costs them more than she financially makes. Wants more kids, wants huge renovations done but refuses to watch the kids while she gets them done. He has to watch over them while working, nothing gets done quietly, and that gives her anxiety and stress. Makes him attend job fairs and hope that he'll find a job making just as much money. It won't happen, but he does it anyway to please the demands. It frustrates me because my time with him has literally become therapy sessions where he vents for hours. It's brutal, and I hate that he tolerates it. The one that gets me the most is that she would rather pretend to have a really good career than move in with him so she can have a great family lifestyle. They'd save tons of money and they would be a much better parenting team. Story 5. My mom is a Karen. Not fun. I think she was part of the reason the girl I loved left because whenever she was around, my mom behaved much better and put on a nice face. We argued frequently about my relationship with my mom. Hurts a lot. I don't think I can fully let this one go. Edit. I love my mom very much, and she is generally a very nice person. I've spent a good while trying to put it into words accurately, but it's difficult. Everything is very minor and very subtle, but it's constant and all the time. It's not what she does, it's how she does it sort of thing. She doesn't want to try and hide her behavior in public, so she just tries to put her best face forward when others are around, like everyone else does. I don't know if she's aware of what she does when at home because it's so minor and subtle, but I have a difficult time believing that since it is constant and for other reasons. Story 6. Not married to one, but my aunt is. My uncle is the soft-spoken giant. He never stands up to her in any way, except once. At their daughter's wedding, she was about to interrupt the ceremony to close a window because she was chilly. Everyone sitting close could hear her whisper, "I'm gonna do it, but I don't want to be an asshole." My uncle, in a calm, quiet tone, says quickly, "Why stop now?" Almost as if his filter just missed this once. I swear I could hear my dad snort 2 rows back to hold in the laughter. Karen was not happy. That's great. Story 7. I taught my nephews, aged 9 and 11, about Karens last year when they stayed with us for a week after school let out. After describing their traits and observing them in the wild, they asked somewhere around day 2, "Is our mom a Karen?" My reply, "Your words, not mine." Story 8. Sister-in-law is a Karen, and her name is very close to Karen too. One of her most recent masterpieces. Her daughter, my niece, had a big choir performance one night. My family, her family, and my father-in-law and mother-in-law were going to meet for dinner and then go to the show. My neighbor owns a very nice Italian restaurant in town, and he arranged for us to have a big table ready when he got there. We, my family of 4, are halfway to the restaurant when my wife decides to check in with her sister with a text message. Sister-in-law, Karen, immediately calls back and casually says she's running late. She is always late, and that it would be best if we drove to their house to pick them up. To this day, I don't understand how that will help us when she's already late and we had a rather tight window to have dinner. But Karen throws a fit when my wife pushes back, so we turn around, pick them up, and drive to the restaurant. We sit down and she scans the menu, asks the waitress questions, and tells her a couple of times she's not ready to order and needs a few minutes. Meanwhile, we're all openly reminding her that we are on a tight window. Doesn't matter, Karen will not be rushed. It should also be noted that my neighbor's restaurant has a single-page menu that doesn't even change, and Karen has been to this restaurant many times. By the time she decided what she wants to order, we realized we now have no time to eat. She gives all sorts of shit to the waitress, demanding to-go boxes for our meals that are now being served. My neighbor then came to our table to try and figure out what was going on, and she immediately stood up to try and explain what was going on and threw the waitress under the bus. As we were leaving, I pull my neighbor and the waitress aside to tell them what really happened, profusely apologize, and tell them that it was absolutely not their fault at all. Story 9. Not married to a Karen, but my mom is a Karen whose name is actually Karen. Simply put, I haven't seen her in over a year because I couldn't take it anymore. Living with her was just an exhausting nightmare. Karen's world revolves around Karen. Nobody else's issues matter. If you tell her that you had a bad day, she'll give you 20 reasons why her day was worse. Did you work 60 hours this week? Well, when she was your age, she would work 80. You're in the hospital after having a major surgery? Well, she has pinched a nerve in her arm, which is somehow worse. Your boyfriend cheated on you? She couldn't even begin to tell you about all the heartbreak she's experienced in her life. She complains left and right about anything and everything. If you're taking a week's break just after getting back from college, she'll ask you why you haven't gotten a job yet and claim you're lazy. If you're out at a restaurant, the food is always too cold or too burnt or too salty. You can only ever go to the places she wants to go because everything else is crap. During my entire graduation dinner, she complained about how cold the food was. She thrives in getting attention and constantly seeks it, but she has few actual friends. Facebook is her lifeblood, and she's always looking to start something there. She's the queen of sharing uninformed, misguided, conservative propaganda, which always started fights in her comments. Also, if a tragedy happens in the family, like the passing of my teenage cousin, she'll make a big scene on Facebook and expect condolences from anyone and everyone, and makes note of the people who don't give her what she wants. Don't even get me started on the blatant racism. I've heard everything from "watch out for black people on the subway, they'll try and take your purse," to "it should be illegal for those Muslims to cover their faces. You should be able to see someone's face." And one of my best friends is black, and she once told me, "He's one of the good ones. They should all be like him." Minor, but the house always had to be spotless. Do you have a shirt on your bedroom floor? Pick it up! You kids are all slobs! We have people coming over! No, we don't, and even if we do, why were they going to be in my bedroom? Her house is her house, and she'll let you know. Any object she has spent money on doesn't belong to you, it belongs to her. And she also spends way too much money on home decor like oriental rugs, furniture, etc., but then complains about how she has no money. And before anyone asks, yes, my dad is divorced from her. Story 10. My mom is a Karen. She literally cannot help herself but tell other people her opinion. She genuinely sees it as doing everyone a favor. It destroys her relationships with my siblings. None of the other siblings will even talk to her. A few years ago, we went out to eat. The restaurant served bread and butter before the meal. The butter was whipped. My mother, the former dairy farmer's daughter, insisted that they bring her real butter. The waitress went back to the kitchen and came back and told her that what she had was butter. How dare she? My mom, who apparently is infallible in her ability to detect butter, started acting like a complete asshole to the waitress about it. She knows what real butter tastes like. I go to this restaurant often, and my kids are there, so my first instinct was to apologize to the waitress. That was a bad idea. As soon as I did, my mom went into a rage about respecting her elders and walked out of the restaurant. To this day, she still won't admit that she was unkind to the waitress. Story 11. My mom's a Karen. She's self-aware that she's a Karen, and my siblings and I send her memes about it. When my stepdad divorced her last summer, we were all amazed he lasted 17 years, to be honest. None of us like going out with her. It's terrible, and my husband just straight up tells her, "No, you aren't talking to the manager," when we go in a place. I'll tell you guys about a story my step told us. They're farmers and own a small beef and bee farm. They have a store they go to for bee supplies. The owner called my stepdad and asked him to please be the one to pick up their own stuff because the staff was tired of dealing with my mom. He's the only one who went to the store for the next 5 years. Story 12. My mom is a literal Karen, as in it's in her name, but she's like a bizarro Karen. She'll constantly ask to speak with the managers and supervisors and bosses. But when said manager arrives, she unloads about the employee helping her out was fantastic, hardworking, and friendly. And then she'll spend some 20 minutes trying to figure out if she and the manager know someone in common. 9 times out of 10, they do. As a kid, it would embarrass me, but as an adult, it's one of my favorite things about her. She makes people feel good about the work they do, and it's really special to watch how wonderful she makes people feel. Plus, she's got long, gorgeous silver hair. Story 13. My sister is a Karen. Everyone feels so sorry for her husband. Everything is his fault and he's treated like a slave. She only addresses him by yelling. She constantly insults him. We have no idea why he hasn't divorced her or flipped out and attacked her. We all told her to cool it, and she responds that he's just so stupid. I could go on, but my sister really is a horrible person. Story 14. My mom is a Karen. She thinks the world is supposed to cater to her and serve her, and everyone else is wrong. Once we went to a Carl's Jr. and she ordered 4 burgers for the 4 of us. She pulls one out of the bag while the guy is getting our drinks and hides it. She complains that he forgot a burger. She pulls them out one by one, counting them in front of him. It's obviously missing because she had hid it, and he's swearing up and down that he put them all in the bag. I'm stunned speechless, and it happened so fast. She got a free burger and laughed as we drove off. I'm just staring at her, and she opens it up to eat it on our drive home. And she eats her actual burger like the 5th one never existed. I can't even explain how she is when she's in the hospital. She treats it like a luxury stay in a hotel. Story 15. Not married, but dated a male Karen for 8 years. He was a semi-successful business owner who was twice my age, and I was young and dumb, for lack of a better word. The gist of our relationship was him trying to take over every part of my life. For instance, he would order for me at the restaurants and would dissuade me if I wanted to get something new. If I had a problem with something, it would be brushed off, but if he had a problem, then he would talk to the manager. Not knowing any better, I just thought he was very particular and ended up copying some of his tendencies, like speaking up when I felt like I wasn't getting the right service when I was out on my own. I realized who he was when we were flying back from Vegas and our luggage was heavier than when we flew in. Obviously, we brought extra things which made up for the weight differences, so as he demanded to know an explanation from the check-in clerk as to why it was the same luggage that would somehow weigh more, I innocently answered that it must have been the extra shoes and clothes. He was quiet and paid up. Later, he told me not to do that again, as he knew the reason why the luggage was heavier, but he was just trying to get away with not paying. At that moment, a light bulb went off in my head. This man who I'd spent $1,500 on a stripper for his friend was making an absolutely stressful job more stressful for the clerk to avoid paying $60. We broke up soon after, and I checked myself on the Karen tendencies he rubbed off on me. A male Karen, huh? What do we call them? Darren, Ken, Cody, Kyle, Carl, Kareem? Story 16. This is gonna get buried, but it's a juicy one. I was married to Karen, and it was absolutely embarrassing and cost me so many good friendships. I was in the military, and she would continually cause drama with the other wives, wear my rank on her sleeve, and was the first person to judge. She always had the attitude that she was better than everyone, still does from what I've heard, and flip out on servers, and I would have to straight up sneak tip them. Well, after a few different duty stations and a lot of burned friendships, I was getting tired of it, and I would look forward to going on my deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. On my last one, she decided to cheat on me with my best friend, kinda love it, and I'm immediately told about it. I'm not sure if that was because I was well-liked or she was well-hated. Anyway, that was my thank God moment. I can be the first one in my family to get a divorce and not get judged too hard for it and end 10 years of absolute misery. So fast forward to today. My ex-best friend, thanks for the solid, dude, and my ex-wife ended up getting married. But if there's one thing you don't do, it's cheating on your deployed husband. This is very poorly looked upon by everyone in the military, and you'll be excommunicated by the community. The other is starting a marriage based on cheating. So, from what I've heard, not that I really give a crap, is that she is divorcing him for cheating on him, and she is no longer allowed to be on the post for shacking up with another married dude while his wife was deployed. The circle of shame continues. Also, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because there were a lot more repercussions for them because of the initial instance that happened while I was deployed.
Children of I Want to Talk to Your Manager parents, what has been your most embarrassing experience? We got screwed once in a Taco Bell drive-thru, not the usual way, which sent my mom into a complete meltdown. The people running the place had, I kid you not, run out of lettuce. And I've never dealt with dumber people. Instead of just telling people they were out and letting go, they were being idiots and saying, there'll be a small delay. It was a super hot day, the AC was broken, we're exhausted, and all we really want is some water. But we're stuck in the drive-thru line waiting and waiting as they try to figure out how to make lettuce out of thin air, I don't know. You think there'd be another bag somewhere or something, but maybe that was too complicated for them. So, 20 minutes or so, sitting and cooking in the car, trapped between other cars in the drive through and unable to go forward or back or even sideways. And my mother is just cursing up a blue streak about the stupidity of the people involved, screaming her damn head off about just frickin' make some lettuce free tacos. What do you use for brains? I remember how much of this very vividly as I was 12 or 13 at the time, and I was learning all sorts of new words and phrases. My little brother took notes. And that's when we see some Taco Bell teenage idiot employee boy make a break from the building and go sprinting across the parking lot over towards the grocery store across the way. They sent out a jerk to go buy some lettuce. The cursing rises a few notches. Nobody cares about the frickin' lettuce. Jesus frickin' Christ, just let us out of here, you little etc., etc., etc. Volume, a little variety, a bit more viciousness. My mom hits all the good V's. 45 minutes or so after we got into this, the car at the window, a couple ahead of us, which is probably the real villain of the story, why wouldn't they just freaking leave without lettuce? Like, WTH. Finally gets handed something and they don't leave immediately, they have to freaking talk for a while before they drive off. My mom is a volcano past its sell-by date and just frothing at the mouth by now, but eventually they pull off and leave and we can pull up to the window. What I've left out of the story is, well, my family, for a few good years, would participate in parades as clowns, handing out candy to the kids at the side of the road and dancing our way through the parade route to the rocking tune of Celebrate, Good Time Tonight, you know the melody, on repeat. And this day was one of those days. We were all in full costume. Makeup, super baggy rainbow pants, rainbow wig, big flower on the suspenders, big old ridiculous shoes, the whole deal. So the car finally pulls away ahead of us, and my mom, who for the last hour has been a spitting bulldog of indicative rage and a constant criticizer of the drive-through window people's ancestry and breeding, realizes she has to pull up and face them in full clown regalia to get our stupid tacos. I remember that moment when mom realized it, the mix of anger, embarrassment, ridiculousness of it. And eventually the humor of the whole situation went through her and she started laughing so hard she was crying. And when the people behind us started honking for us to just go, they'd been waiting too, it just got funnier somehow. So now my mom is not just a crazy angry lady, she's a crazy angry clown lady, and more than that, she's a crazy clown lady who's been sweating and now crying too. So she's not even a crazy clown lady with good makeup anymore. She's just a wreck of a crazy clown lady, which makes her laugh even harder. My brother and I thought she was going to pass out. I mean, she couldn't breathe, and those outfits, the heat, hell, the whole reason we pulled into this place was we needed water. To give mom credit, she didn't just squeal out there, flipping everyone the bird. She got herself together, pulled up to the window, looked up at the girl through the car window with her ruined clown makeup and big rainbow wig, and handed her the money very calmly, said thank you, and took the bag, and we drove off. I hope to hell they remember us. I know I'll never forget the look on the drive-through girl's face as we drove up, and she started to try to apologize for the delay and just stopped, staring at us. Good day to you too. So this was a tough story to read only because I had to do so many damn retakes because I kept chuckling up and laughing my ass off imagining a whole family clown car stuck at a Taco Bell drive-thru, getting all sweaty and wet and hungry and thirsty and getting all mad, and then at the end of the day just having to put a big smile on their face. Good stuff. Best story ever so far. Let's hope the rest are just as good. This is story 2. Okay, so we were going to a theme park in the capital of the country. I must have been around 19, which makes my one sister 16 and the youngest around 9. My dad had been planning this for a year, and we were pretty psyched to go. After you go into this place, you see a huge lake, and on each side there are several shops. A restaurant there, a souvenir shop there, and also there is a Build-A-Bear shop. This shop is not a part of the park itself, but it does have an entrance from the park. Anyway, my dad didn't have custody of my sister at the time and only saw her very sporadically. This was by his own choice since his anxiety meant he couldn't take care of her properly. She lived with a foster family, and this was one of the maybe 3 times a year he got to actually take her somewhere, so this trip was a big deal. He told her she could have one thing from the park, whatever she wanted, he would pay for it. And being a 9-year-old girl, she said she wanted a Build-A-Bear. My dad was unfamiliar with the concept of a Build-A-Bear, so he didn't know that the price of the bear isn't the total price. On top of it comes the clothes, the shoes, etc. So the shop person takes my sister through the whole thing, stuffing, putting the heart in, etc., and rings up the total. And my dad totally lost it. Like, red in the head, screaming at this poor girl in the shop, lost it. And I felt so embarrassed. Firstly, this girl didn't make the prices. Secondly, this was the trip of the year. It was all four of us for the first time in forever. And thirdly, you just don't yell at people like that. I get that he was angry since he didn't know the process and felt cheated. And also, he felt backed into a corner since he had promised my sister that she could have anything. But you don't do that, not ever. Luckily, the rest of the trip went by without a hitch, and my youngest sister doesn't remember this happening. She has 2 Build-A-Bears now, and she named each of them after one of her sisters. Story 3. Oh lordy, my mom is one of those, but she's not the type to push her way through lines and would only talk to a manager if really need be. But due to her stern and scary personality, she can't really draw attention to herself. One incident when I was around 8 or 9 was when we had to pay our immigration fees. This wasn't in the US, by the way, but in the Philippines. We aren't Filipino citizens, so we need to go both to the US Embassy then the local immigration offices to pay our yearly dues while living there. The immigration processing line was long, like DMV long, and slow. Not to mention the office was infamous for having really lazy workers who only speed up the paperwork when there's a bribe. My mom, after 2 hours of waiting, had enough. She actually knew the vice chief at that time, went to school with him, and this is how the conversation goes. Mom, I want to speak to Chief Wiggum, Simpson name here. Officer scoffs at my mom. Sorry, but you can't just meet. Mom cuts her off and leans in and in a low drawl, tell Chief Wiggum Marge is here. He knows who I am. Looks at me, then the officer. He knows who we are. Officer had a look of panic, asked a co-worker to watch his booth, and left. About 10 minutes later, this jolly fellow, a bit of sweat on his brow, comes by, hugs my mom, and gives his officers a look. Mom took me by the hand, and we were ushered to his office. In the 15 minutes we were there, our papers were personally processed by him. In the next few years, we would just walk into his office to get this done and had this perk until he passed away. I learned later that day of my memory, Chief Wiggum was in a board meeting when he got called and abruptly left. Due to my mom's actions, it was assumed she was his mistress and me, the love child. He got quite the teasing of a lifetime because of that. As a note, my mom was the alumni secretary of her school, is also one of the most beautiful in her class, and is a baddie. I never knew Chief Wiggum has been sent to our house many times during reunions. Many of my mom's classmates moved to being big bosses in government offices, and she pulled this prank a few times, much to the amusement of her friends. They love her to bits. Nothing in that explanation convinced me that this dude's mom wasn't his mistress, and he or she is not the love child of Marge and Chief Wiggum. Story 4. I think every memory I have of my mom is her yelling at a customer service employee either on the phone or in their face. I always felt bad for the employees. I remember at least one instance in which I felt really embarrassed. I did an online program that was geared towards new drivers. It was all about driving safety and took forever to do. At the end of the course, the young driver had the opportunity to get lower insurance rates, so I had to call a customer service representative and confirm personal information as well as answer some things from the course in order to get the rates. My mom kept insisting I put the phone on speaker. Every time I did, the rep would tell me to take it off of speaker. My mom would then try to follow me around the house trying to listen in, and the rep could hear her and said she needed to stop. My mom got mad at the rep, and I ended up not getting the lower rates on my insurance because the rep was fed up. Story 5. My dad is a pretty big hothead and thinks yelling loudly at customer service employees will solve things. So one time I brought my laptop into a Best Buy for a quick fix. They said I could come get it the next day after it was finished. We show up the next day and they give me a laptop that is 100% not mine. I just let them know politely that there's been a mistake and it's not my computer. They apologize and go looking for mine. 10 minutes later, they can't find it. Cue Rage Machine Father, you better find his laptop or there are going to be problems. No mention of what kind of problems, just one of those I'm screaming it sounds threatening sentences. They explain they will keep looking and call me when they have found it, but they will call me every day with an update. I'm totally fine with this being a relatively laid-back person. I was only worried I wouldn't have a laptop for my first week of college. Anyways, they did call every day, and every day my father would get on the phone and yell about how unbelievably stupid you'd have to be to lose a computer in the store. This happened for about 4 days. Every time that we get off the phone with my father, I would call them back myself to apologize for that and calmly say, "Don't worry about it, I'm sure it'll turn up soon." Guy on the phone was very gracious. I wasn't screaming at him and told me if they didn't find it by the end of day tomorrow, I could come in and pick a laptop and they would write it off to replace mine. Well, they never found my computer, but I did get a much nicer one for free, which I honestly think had I not called to apologize on my father's behalf every day, I wouldn't have been given the option to choose any laptop to replace it. Well, not that he should have been screaming at them, but I would have been pretty pissed too, considering how they lost a whole laptop. Like, seriously, how do you even do that, like his dad said, in a store? But anyway, if you two are super curious as to where his laptop went, then please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more crazy stories just like this one. Story 6. This is a weird story that had a huge impact on me and about a parent talking to the manager, but it is a little different. Growing up, my dad was sheriff of a small town. I must have been around 8 or 9. He was brought in after the previous sheriff was booted out for political reasons or stealing city funds. That was a really unpopular movie since he was super popular and spread his money all over town and let people get away with crimes they committed. That sheriff was out and my dad was brought in. Everybody hated him, in part because they loved the old sheriff, and also because my dad was an outsider even though he came from about 2 towns over. He wasn't of their world, so he could never be fit to see over the village. It didn't help that my dad was a raging jerk with a stick up his bum for the rules. Anyway, one day, my dad was dressed in his full uniform and took me alone to the local corner diner. You know, like one of those places straight out of Roadhouse. We sat down and ate the full dinner, and my dad lectured me something about respect and the rules are all we have. Then the waitress came in and dropped the check. My dad looked at it and it said the meal was free. My dad then excused himself and went up to the waitress. I kept to myself and doodled on the napkin, and the next time I looked up, my dad was full on screaming at the woman. He was straight up shaking. She tried to explain that free meals is how all cops are treated in this town, and my dad was furious that he would get special treatment, that police are put above the normal laws, that the police have rules they must follow, and not accepting kickbacks is one of those rules, and that it especially happened in front of his kid who he's trying to teach right. Everyone in the diner was quiet and just staring at him. It was a weird situation because it was a moment where my dad showed a lot of integrity, but also a story of a 6'7" man with a firearm on his belt screaming at a tiny little waitress. It stuck in my head as a clear picture of the contradictions that our parents are. Like, a lot of the good comes from them, but at the same time, a lot of the bad too. I know a lot of people would say how crappy he was, but he was a guy who roughed up my brother and I, had anger issues, was painfully insecure and closed off, but was also a noteworthy cop. He rose through the ranks and, as a white man, brought progressive racial policies to his department in the 1980s that, to this day, are still radical. He was an innovator as a police administrator. I'll put it like this: he did heartbreaking things to me, and yet I found room to forgive him. Through a long and painful process, I found room to forgive him as an adult. Not excuse his behavior, but peace in my heart towards my feelings towards him. Whatever opinion you have of him, keep in mind that from your computer, it is one that is really easy for you to have, and for me, it is and will always be a really difficult one for me to have. Story 7. My mom used to run restaurants, and my stepfather used to be a chef in high-end restaurants and is the kind of guy who expects to be treated better than he is currently being treated, regardless of whatever that treatment is. They are so not fun to go out to eat with. The most embarrassing experience is actually their most embarrassing experience, one where I embarrass them. My wife and I pride ourselves on being a relief table when we go out to eat. Both of us have been servers, and there's always the counterpoint to the difficult table. That's us. Barring horrible service or bad food, we are super easy customers, we tip well and try to have a good time with our server. Furthermore, we just treat people nicely. So you can imagine our disdain when my parents act like they're frickin' royalty at a dinner service. My wife and I went out to dinner with them. They were being particularly tough. My mom was acting like she was Gordon Ramsay, analyzing the business, critiquing everything down to the amount of bubbles in her seltzer. Looks like it's time to change the CO2. My stepdad was getting more and more heated over stupid things like the amount of ice in his drink and how the waitress didn't top off his water. that he was barely sipping on fast enough. It came to a head when my stepfather ordered a steak, medium well. It came back medium well, and for some reason he changed his mind that he wanted it medium rare while it was cooking. And they didn't read his mind, so he gave attitude, as did my mom. They jumped really quickly to demanding free stuff. Now, I'm an adult, and this may be the first time they realize this. I interrupted in front of the server and said something like, "Really? This is what you're doing? That's what you ordered." I turned to the server and said, "We don't need anything comped." I then pulled out my wallet and handed her my card and said, "This is for the bill. We'll happily wrap up with what we have here. I'm very sorry for their behavior. You're doing great." Then the line that stung them so deep they still bring it up years later. "I was taught to treat people nicely, a lesson that seems to be forgotten. Thank you." They turned red, the server walked away, I looked down and cut my steak and didn't say a word. They were so flabbergasted that the meal was virtually silent except me asking my stepfather how his steak was a few minutes later. I signed the check, gave a big tip, and we walked out and said goodbyes. They've been nicer to servers each time that we've gone out since. All right, good on this guy for actually standing up to his parents. That line, that final line, killer. I think they learned something, at least something they once knew, from him that day. Story 8. So my grandmother wasn't only a let me talk to your manager type, she was prejudiced, and advancing dementia completely turned off her filter for that. I've blocked out all the context behind it other than I took her to buy yarn and something went wrong. I think maybe they shorted her a couple of bucks or wouldn't honor a coupon or something. And whatever it was, it ended in a let me talk to your manager, followed by a tirade to the manager about how they shouldn't be hiring Mexicans. I just remember having to talk over her and say, "Oh my God, you can't talk to her like that. Nothing you just said is okay." Followed by me trying to push her wheelchair out of the store as fast as possible, with her digging her feet into the ground trying to get me to stop, so she could go back to trying to ruin someone's day and me wondering if I'd go to jail for elder mistreatment if her ankles snapped in the process, because nothing was going to stop me getting her out of that store. I got her into the car and then went back in and apologized till I was blue in the face. I wish I could say it was an isolated incident, but it definitely wasn't. If by any cosmic chance any sales clerks or phone reps that had to deal with my grandmother read this, I am so incredibly sorry. I apologize on behalf of my whole family, and I'd give you a hug if I could. As an interesting side effect of caring for her, I have a tendency to wander off and pretend to look at things when we get to the register if I'm with someone, and I'm not the one paying. I think she gave me an honest-to-God phobia. Anyway, she passed away 2 years ago, so it's thankfully something I won't have to deal with for a while. I'd never experienced someone digging their heels in before, and I was sort of panicking trying to get her out of the store before she tried anything else. I think under any kind of better circumstances, I would have worked it out. Bonus story. So this one thankfully happened at home, but is nevertheless, I guess, equal parts amusing and equally awful as the other story in hindsight. It was some kind of special occasion, probably one of our birthdays because we were all sitting at the kitchen table eating cake. The nightly routine was we all sat down to eat dinner and she'd put the TV on in the evening news, which we'd halfway listen to. They were talking about something political and said blah 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 blah, and the House Judicial Committee approved this. My grandmother caught that one line and said, "The Judicial Committee? Those damn Jews, what are they doing with all these committees?" I got caught somewhere between wanting to laugh at her misunderstanding and wanting to make some kind of noise of horror, and instead I just inhaled sharply and aspirated a gigantic mouthful of chocolate cake and coughed so hard and so long that my mom wound up having to take me to urgent care because it set off my asthma. Good times, y'all. Good times.
What screams, "I'm an entitled POS"? Many moons ago, I sold cell phones. Part of purchasing a cell phone is a credit check. Well, this schmuck came into my store wanting a cell phone and apparently called ahead to let the store know he was coming. And my boss told me I had to be super nice to him. He arrives in a suit, has his arm candy with him that was busy fawning all over him in a cringeworthy way. He picks his cell phone and I start the process. When I ask for his social, which is required by the cell company, he says no. I politely explain that I can't continue the process unless I have his social, and he goes, "Just wave it through." Something I can't do. I state again, I have no ability to do that, and he pulls the "Do you know who I am?" nonsense. His arm candy then chimes in with, He's a very important lawyer, so we don't give that kind of information out. By now, my boss senses a hiccup, and the schmuck comes over and tells me to push through the order, knowing full freaking well I can't do any kind of thing like that. I call the cell provider, who doesn't give two cares who this guy is, and says, "Sorry, we can't process it without a social." My boss was furious at me. The customer was furious at me and my boss, and they stormed out. My boss tried to run me up over it, even though he knows damn well I can't do a single thing about it. Screw people like that. His obsequious POS boss is even worse than the lawyer. Story 2. Military wives who think that the rank of their husband makes them important. Back when I was a boot fresh out in the fleet, I was living in the barracks, and there was always an E5 on watch in the lobby, making sure the barracks dwellers were not trashing the common areas and smoking only in the designated areas. One particular guy's wife would always spend the entire day in the lobby and the couch watching TV like she owned the place when her husband was on watch. She'd go out to the smoke pit and smoke, and then tell other actual military members to pick up trash and get onto them if they strayed too far from the smoke pit while smoking. Always saying something like, "I could go get my husband if you don't do what I say." An E5. And of course, there are other officers' wives or college-aged children that will be out at the bar or some other social place and act snobby toward you once they find out you're enlisted. Story 3. I'm a tech support phone monkey. Pretty much nobody understands the meaning of technician availability. So when their TV services go out because of some sort of technical issue and I tell them the earliest available appointment is a week out, it inevitably gets to the point where they ask, "Can you just reschedule someone else who isn't having a service outage?" Like, yeah, you'd love that to happen to you, wouldn't you? All of a sudden, the appointment you had scheduled, who knows how long in advance and planned your schedule around, gets rebooked because some entitled schmuck convinced a service rep they were more important than you. I'm sure you'd be perfectly understanding. I swear, it's like people don't even think before they say this thing. Story 4. I worked as a cashier for a grocery store that went overboard with the whole customer worship thing. Like how you cannot start a new transaction until a previous customer has retrieved their bags and left the pay station. That's fine, to ensure packages don't get confused, but a few customers figure this out and would regularly misuse it just to assert some sort of pointless dominance. Had one woman who would always plop her purse at the end of the register, casually root in her purse for nothing and essentially dare you to start your next transaction. I got to the point where I'd hold the first item of the next order over the scanner and turn to stare her down, item in the air. It usually inspired the new customer to ask if something was wrong, and then tell them loudly, "I'm so sorry, our policy dictates that we're not allowed to begin until a previous customer is gone." And unfortunately, she stopped messing around with me and moved on to the cashiers to play her stupid game. She complained about me several times to management, but I could always deflect with how the next customers were upset, and I was just trying to explain her happiness policy with honesty. Holding that item over the scanner like a weaponized grocery. Story 5. I haven't, luckily, dealt with many entitled people, but the most entitled person I ever met was when I was a manager. I started as a sales associate and moved up several positions in less than a year, mostly due to high turnover, but also because I worked hard. So I was still pretty young. Hired this lady in her 40s to work as a cashier, and she insisted on only doing things explicitly stated in her job description and nothing more. She must have missed the line that said, "and other tasks as assigned by management." She turned her nose up and refused to take out the trash, wouldn't clean the bathrooms, wouldn't help other departments get their sections ready at the end of a shift, and always with this accusatory tone and look in her face like, "You expect me to do that?" She would just sit there and wait for everyone else to finish what they were doing, and had the nerve to ask if she could leave because she was done. I'm like, nope, we leave as a team. As a manager, I tried to take care of most of that because everyone else was usually busy and I was generally free to move around as I pleased. But at the end of the day, I had to count the cash register and other management-related tasks, but sometimes you just need to help out your coworkers. Story 6. I have a perfect example. Story time. I'm from the East Coast, but I live closer to the West Coast due to my husband being in the military. Last year, my parents came to visit and stayed at the Hilton. I went with them while they checked in because I haven't seen them since I moved. Anyway, my dad has the lowest possible version of the Hilton honors, but that didn't stop my mom, who acts like an entitled POS, from telling everyone around her that she's Hilton honors and she should be treated as such. They got a very nice room, but my mom complained because it wasn't a Hilton honors room. There was a very nice man who carried her bags up the stairs, no elevator in the building they were staying in, and she complained to him about the room and she deserved the best treatment. I swear, If I heard her say, "I'm Hilton Honors" one more time, I would have smacked her. They eventually did get moved to a Hilton Honors floor. The room they had before was actually nicer. But my mom always demands the honors rooms, so whatever. I don't know how my dad has put up with her these past 30 plus years, but I'm glad I don't have to deal with her a lot anymore. My dad is much more humble than my mom is. I feel bad for him. My parents stayed at Hilton with me. My dad had the lowest version of Hilton Honors, but my mom was still acting like an entitled POS and tried to get the best treatment because of it. Also, I'm hammered. Story 7. There's a lot of good ones here. Most recent one was last year for me. I'm the team admin of my daughter's travel soccer team. 12 girls on the team. First year of travel, so it's different than just club or play for fun stuff for just about everyone. Trainer or coach sets the practice schedule. 4:30 p.m., Monday, Wednesday each week. 1 week into the school year, a mom, whom I had met previously and knew she'd be a problem, emails me to state, "These practice times don't work for me. We need to change them to 5:30 that coincides with my son's practice times." To be clear, 11 other families, the trainer, and so on, all scheduled their lives around this and were making it work, but we all should change our thing for her. Her kid was the biggest pain all season, and because she didn't get her way, mom pulled her with 4 weeks left in the season. Bye-bye. Don't let the door hit you or the Lord split you. Story 8. Oh boy, I can tell my story from earlier this week. Scene. Roommate and I driving a friend back home. We stopped at a friend's favorite hibachi place for dinner because we wanted a nice meal before we began our trip home. It was a 5 to 6 hour drive both ways, and we sat in a booth. There were people in the booth in front of us, and they were going off on the manager and waitress because their Mongolian beef was just a bit more cooked than asked for it to be. Like, marginally more cooked than what they ordered. And the guy was throwing a huge fit, screaming, "Screw you, buddy!" Just making an absolute goddamn scene. Then he turns to look at us. I'm in his line of sight, and he stared me straight in the eye and said, "I'm sorry for the scene I'm about to cause." As if I was going to support him. I was dumbfounded for a second, but then I told him straight up to get off and that if he made a scene or tried to involve us, we'd absolutely be giving a police report on him and his behavior. It's not like the beef was inedible or even remotely far away from what he asked, but like, my dude. He then proceeded to throw a huge fit at me for telling him to quit being a child and that I would report him for mistreatment and whatever else I could. He said he was going to call his lawyer and get me punished to the fullest extent of the law. Okay, dude. And I'd regret talking to him like that because I'm just a child. I'm 23 and this dude was in his 40s, my best guess. I look my age, but not like a baby. I have visible tattoos and facial piercings. So then he and his wife just get up and walk out without paying. That wasn't before they made an absolute mess of their table, dumping food, drinks, sauce, and everything else they had on it. I was so much more mad about that than him trying to yell at me. I wanted to key his car. I didn't, but the thought was therapeutic enough for me. But yeah, they left without paying or saying anything further after they made a huge mess at the table. The manager came back to talk to us about what happened because it was a mess. But we weren't too bothered. Like it was upsetting, but we weren't mad at the staff because obviously it wasn't their fault. But yeah, I witnessed a couple in their 40s act like complete and utter children because their beef was cooked slightly more than they asked for and then told them to eat mess because they tried to make me and my friend support them. Story 9. People who think their title means something and they're deserving of perks, or that you should be lucky because you know them or whatever. Waitress here. Supposedly the drummer from Michael Jackson came to our mom and pop restaurant all the time. Gave us a signed photo dedicated to my dad and grandma who also work here. Got their name wrong and forced me to hang it on our bulletin board. We never asked him to, but he insisted because it would help our business grow. We tore it down as soon as he left. He was also rude and never tipped. We sell gift certificates and one day caught him using a scanned copy of said voucher. They're just paper with my signature on them, and I could tell my signature looked off because it was printed on and not hand-signed. We called him out on it, and he denied all of it and made a big show of it. Left and came back with the real vouchers he was making copies of, saying they were real and someone must have given him fakes. We keep all of the vouchers people use, and we found 6 replicas he used. Haven't seen him since, but his wife occasionally comes in order to go and hides in her car until the order is ready because she's embarrassed. His kids and wife were there that day as well. Just pathetic. Also, no, we don't accept vouchers from his family anymore. The wife's embarrassing antics are the perfect dessert to this chaotic meal. Story 10. Former movie theater box office employee. We had people go into the movie, watch the entire thing, and then come out and complain about some random thing like, "Oh, so-and-so stole my seat," or "There was a noisy child." They demanded either a refund or a free pass. Like hell to the no. If there was a problem and you didn't inform an usher when the movie was going on, that's your problem. I can't refund you a ticket because you already saw the damn movie. We had people come in all the time and pull us for free tickets to the point where management doesn't allow us to give them out anymore unless it's an emergency. Weather or power outage. The moms who would be there to buy their kids movie tickets into an R movie and then leave were trashy too. I get docked pay if I allow kids in that aren't supposed to be. But my favorite was this middle-aged guy with 10 of his buddies who came in and tried to use a movie pass in a movie that doesn't allow passes. I told him no, and he threw the biggest adult temper tantrum I've ever seen. What an entitled... Then there was that time that a child retched in the lobby in a busy morning and the mother refused to clean it up because that's what the employees are for. She walked right up to my box and asked me if I was going to clean that up, and then took her sick child into the movie anyway. I quit that day, actually. Story 11. The famous, "Do you know who I am?" line. I used to work the door security for a local bar. It was a very busy night, and I was going through the interior of the pub when I saw a group of kids. These kids played in a local band. They were quite well known. Two of the members were siblings, and their dad had some semblance of local music fame, which they have used as a stepping stone to bolster their own recognition. They were little else than a local pub covers band. They had very big ideas about themselves, but they were no different from the hundreds of other bands in the pub circuit. However, the main thing that people used to say when talking about the band, "How good of a singer is she? She's only 15. Him there on the drums is her brother. He's only 16. Their ages were very well known as they had been all over the local media. I walked up and told them to leave as I knew that they were not old enough. They argued, and the brother of the two siblings came at me with, "Do you even know who we are?" I responded very firmly with, "Yes, I know exactly who you are. You're..." And she's, "You play in a pub band. You're 16 and she's 15. Get out." Then they told me that, "Our dad will get this place shut down. Do you know who he is?" I did indeed. He was one of the oldest friends of the landlord, and also my uncle. Suffice to say, nothing more happened. Story 12. People who clog space, especially private space. There's a stage show that I've seen 99,000 times. Seeing it so much, the old version, I had a loop in my head of how it was supposed to be pulled off each time, so it was easy to see something would go wrong if a cue was missed or whatever. Either way, this doesn't bode well for two women who came up to where I'm standing. A spot that is beyond empty. They could have picked anywhere else. I take a step to the side, they follow, and they start crowding my personal space even more. At this point, I don't care for their antics. If they're trying to thrill me to notice them, make jokes on them, I'm not straight and do not care or swing that way. Then the elbowing starts. At this point, there's about 2 minutes left in the show, the big finale. Said finale uses some pretty potent fireworks laid in the corners of the stage area that turn into a nuclear winter when they go off. Lots of noise also to match. Closer, closer, closer. That's right. Keep elbowing the guy standing there wearing steel-toe boots. Closer, closer. Finale action on stage, disappear in nuclear winter. At this point, they scrunch up in shock at the sudden explosions, and I quickly lash out with my foot in a down-low circular motion and make hard contact with the one elbowing me in her ankle. "Hey, watch it! That really hurt! Why did you do that?" Whoosh, I'm gone. Seriously. I'm rushing up a staircase at that point and melted into the crowd. Probably still haven't learned their lesson about personal space, but hey, enjoy the free hobbling. Story 13. Being male of Arab descent that is between 15 and 30 years old. Okay, now that I've considerably shoved myself into the corner with all the other prejudices, let me explain. First and foremost, I don't care if someone is Arab or not, or Middle Eastern, or African, or whatever else. But what this group of people has in common 90% of the time, when I see them in my country, are a few very obnoxious qualities. Any talk or discussion becomes a confrontation, like a peacock opening its feathers to scare away predators. If there's such a thing as an inside voice, they do not use it in public whatsoever. The louder they get, the more right they think they are. They are the first ones to cry about being disrespected when confronted with stone-cold facts, while completely disrespecting the person they're talking to. They cannot listen to someone. They have to, again, very loudly, repeat their own view and position nonstop, because the more and the louder they repeat it, the more they will drown out the other side. And thus, they will be right. It will always, always happen while half butchering my native language. They speak it well enough to show they've been raised here, but the accent is so thick and sentence structure off enough that I can pick these people out without ever seeing their face. There's no doubt a bit of a culture barrier, and many likely don't mean it quite the way I interpret it when I come across them, but the arrogance and attitude, that is something I only see in people with that kind of ancestry, and it is horribly pervasive. How do young people like that turn into the old man variety of that culture, which are typically more reasonable and more softly spoken than native of my country at that age? I don't recall the last time I saw older individuals of that culture with such issues. Story 14. People on public assistance who use their food stamp money to buy 12 packs of soda. Take them outside the store, dump said soda out into the pavement, go back inside to collect the deposit money. Use it to buy cigarettes and drinks, then stroll out in their fancy expensive clothes and get into their fancy expensive car and drive off. If that's you, screw you right in the ear. I used to work at a store and the number of people who misuse the system was staggering and disheartening. That's not what it's for. It's for people who truly need a hand and have zero problems with people using it who need it. But if you've got a $40,000 car and your outfit costs more than 2 weeks of my pay, you don't need it. I'd much rather see those people be forced to get off their lazy back and get a job, and that money be used to help homeless folks and other needy folks. Again, I'm not saying everyone on public assistance is lazy, so don't bother with hateful comments, but we all know that some people are just pieces of trash that skate by on it when they're perfectly capable of working like the rest of us have to. I had a friend who had a well-documented medical condition that limited how many hours a week she could work. Her husband was unexpectedly partially paralyzed after a surgery and suddenly couldn't work at all. Their income was below the threshold of qualifying for assistance, but they got turned down for no good reason. Last I knew, her parents were helping them afford the mortgage, so they were homeless while they figured out what to do and if they could appeal. Yet, no one cares enough to go after the people that are just lazy and abusing the system. This country is so messed up in some ways. Story 15. The truly devious ones are the ones that stay in the line knowing they forgot something, but won't get out of line because they don't want to wait again. So that when they are finally checking out, they pull the, "Oh no, I forgot such and such," as the check is scanning their items and they walk back out with zero sense of urgency into the giant store and come back 5 to 10 minutes later with what they forgot. All the while the cashier is tapping at her feet and giving the other people in line an, "I'm sorry, I don't think she'd take this long" look. This move ensures their place in line that everyone behind them is angry. One time this happened and the lady took so long, the cashier sent her husband to look for her and the lady came back before the husband only to say that the husband was paying. So she went back out to find the husband. When they finally both got back and the line was a mile long, the lady turns to the line and says she's sorry. Like, that makes it better. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 16. Non-nonchalantly says, "Oh, is blank in today?" Or, "I'm golf buddies with blank." The dealership I work at has the owner's family name in big letters on the front. If you're an employee, you pretty much know who the family is because they're in and out regularly. And one of the grandsons is working in sales or management and super down to earth. One time I had a guy for a transmission service and he said, "What do you mean I'm being charged this much?" I know, name of grandson who works here. While grandson was in the room, grandson then looked him up and down and said, "No, you don't." And the guy responded, "What's it to you, buddy?" Super condescendingly. I then piped up and said, That's grandson." Needless to say, I haven't seen him back in the dealership or anything in about 6 months. Story 17. They live maybe 25 to 30 minutes from the major commercial or shopping center of their city. They drive in with intent to buy a new phone or pick up an order early or get some custom work ordered. When told that the item is out of stock or not in yet, because we didn't call you like we told you we would, then the item came in. Our customer work will take more than 1 hour. They demand the store reimburse them for gas money. Worked retail for 10 years. When this first happened, I was so stunned by their entitlement or balls, I literally just sat there and stared at the guy for a good 2 minutes. Too stunned to speak. I hate these people with all of my being. Like, I literally have never hated anyone so quickly as when some schmuck doesn't think to call and see if we have the new iPhone in stock 3 days after it releases. Screams at me to pay for the gas for his 20-minute drive. You can go to hell. Story 18. Oh yes, I used to work in a smallish company where we didn't have a janitor or anything. If toilet paper ran out, one of us would go and fetch a new roll. If paper towels ran out in the dispenser, one of us would put in more. Trash can full, one of us takes it out. At least that's if you're a normal person. We had these baffling 3 women who thought they were princesses and would go around the office loudly complaining that we were out of TP or paper towels, or that the trash was starting to smell but never do anything about it. Turns out these princesses who thought cleaning up after themselves or lifting a finger was beneath them were considered the trashiest people in the office by the rest of us. They'd dirty up the kitchen, leave crumbs and a mess after eating, dirty coffee mugs. Ugh, makes me mad just remembering them. Story 19. People who push and shove their way to the front of the line to get on a plane when their group hasn't even been called. God, the worst. I was waiting to get on a plane last weekend and no groups were being boarded except people with small children and in wheelchairs. A scattering of very entitled-looking people were all standing, blocking the aisle to enter. The flight attendant got on the PA and said, "Please move aside if you're not traveling with small children or in need of additional assistance to get on the plane. We have people coming through who need some extra space." The entitled people all looked at each other and no one moved. So these people, carrying babies and in wheelchairs, had to uncomfortably squeeze through all of them. Then when she finally started calling boarding groups, none of them were even in the first few, so they were just in the way for everyone else. Why are people like this? Story 20. I work part-time at a cigarette store. We card everyone as part of policy. However, everyone apparently is too long a word for some people to understand. Why do you have to card me? I'm old. Yes, sir, but I have to put in the birth date. This apparently entitles them to make fun of me, my job, my store, and my coworkers because they have been so put upon us to have reached into their pocket and extract 5 ounces of plastic. You'd think I just asked them to remove one of their digits with a claw hammer. But, sorry, we have to card everyone. Basically, it comes down to, but trust me. Why can't you, a stranger I've never before seen or spoken to, also trust me with their job? Story 21. People who camp in the left lane. It's the passing lane. If you're not passing, then you're in the wrong lane. Litterbugs. This, I'm sure, will get some hate, but most of the dog owners I meet. I don't like your dog. Keep it on a leash. I'm not a dog person. I do love animals, but most of them I want kept away from me. My pets don't run up and start sniffing at you or invading your personal space. Please respect other people's personal space. Just because your dog is small doesn't mean it's okay to run around in the store. I'm cool with service dogs because they're behaved. I rarely see service dogs in stores, I just see dogs running around. To all the responsible pet owners, thank you. My wife is very allergic to pet dander, and if you keep your pets under control, I don't have to stop what I'm doing so we can go back home for her to shower and take allergy meds. Babies and movies. I understand you want to go out, but I don't need your wants to disturb my night. Story 22. Story time. So I went out fishing last year with a buddy in his 92 Lund. Nothing special, but reliable. We were out just after dawn and finished till noon, getting towards the dock and starting waiting patiently for our turn to pull out. There was a long line of both people coming off and launching, and everyone was staying in pretty good line. We were there for almost a half hour, and a guy pulled up in a brand new truck and pontoon, which was about $125 of toys altogether. I told my friend jokingly, bet he gets mad he's not next. Right after he pulled up, and while he was still getting the pontoon ready to launch, our turn came and we pulled up. As I was walking to the truck, I heard him yell, "Hey buddy, how about you wait your turn and I'll let someone else in?" I told him how long we waited before he even pulled in, and as he kept talking, I told him to go screw himself and kept walking. Story 23. Saw a kid wearing his local high school lacrosse penny waiting to catch a train into Chicago for Lollapalooza. He's with a group of 8 or so teenagers. He finishes a tin of dip, skull, and throws the empty tin over his shoulder on the ground. I leave my fiancée on the next bench, pick up the tin, walk it around to him, and say, "I think you dropped this." I extend it to him, look him dead in the eye, and wait. Awkward pause, then he takes it, apologizes under his breath, and throws it in the trash can. Worst part, though, were the girls. The group took over a big part of the train with a few poor bystanders caught in the crossfire. One girl who's dressed like a festival biddy spills a water bottle on a little old Hispanic lady. The girl just laughs. Oh my god, guys. So to make a broad generalization, all teenagers at music festivals are entitled POSs. Story 24. I live collectively. It's a mess. To answer your question, not doing your dishes. This happens every day, and it's so rude to everyone else who uses the same kitchen and the same utensils or plates or pots or pans, etc. Even when dishes are done, they're not always properly done. Especially pots and pans are usually left greasy, sometimes with bits of food still on them, and are usually never picked up after drying. Don't even get me started on the state of our stove. It once gave me half an asthma attack. Playing music, shouting, banging on doors, singing, etc. in the hallways, especially when it's really late. The hallways are right outside rooms where people deserve some peace and quiet. Leaving a tea bag in the electric kettle we all use after a cup. I actually went and bought a teapot to fix this mess. It goes unused. Not scraping the floor after a shower so the rest of us have to walk on water. Someone once made a poo in the toilet and then just didn't flush. Story 25. When I worked in the banking industry, people would often lose their mind over being charged a $10 monthly service fee because, according to them, it's ridiculous to charge them for holding their money. Never mind the fact that it's far more secure and convenient than carrying the money around. Never mind the fact that along with storing your money, we offer a ton of other services, a lot of which they use. It should just be free. It makes sense to some degree. After all, the bank can earn money from your money by loaning it out. They are required to give you your money back when you want it back, but often they make it both difficult and slow. The typical story of banks immediately removing money from accounts with payments, but taking 1 or more days to add it to your account? That's time in limbo where they don't owe interest and can use the money as they please. Obviously, a bank isn't just someone who holds your money. They offer services. You get a card and capacity to pay anywhere without physically carrying money with you. You often get online access to your bank stuff so you don't have to go in, etc. So it does make sense for consumers to be charged money for the convenience, but to say it is for storing the money? Nonsense. It should be a service fee, not a storage fee. Story 26. I work on the facilities crew at a conference center or day camp in the mountains of NC. There's a lady who works for the center full-time. Is a very involved member in the town where we are located. We usually put cones up on the road leading to the parking spots in the back of the main auditorium because when people are parked there, it partially blocks the only path on which we take our truck multiple times a day to pick up supplies for various events. One day, she drove over the cones and parked back there anyway. We approached her as she was getting out of the car and nicely asked her to move her car, to which she blew up at us, screaming that she wasn't just any random trying to park back there and stormed off. You don't care who you are or how much you do around here. Don't park back there. Story 27. We are in paving. There are a few emergencies beyond spring potholes and parking lots. Homeowners generally have years to figure out that their driveway needs work. We're typically booked for half a season before we even start work in the spring, and a month later, we're pretty close to capacity and starting to issue warnings that they might be waiting for next spring. Then you get the calls from folks who expect to have their driveway done next week, probably can't even get an estimate next week, and they try to wheedle, saying, it's just a small job. Like I want to put off a $50,000 parking lot to cram in their measly one-car driveway. I generally just say that some folks have been waiting a year to have their driveway done, and it wouldn't be fair to make them wait longer just because you have a party in 2 weeks. Last year, after being told we were booked up, a man nearly cried. He really wanted us to do the work and whined, what am I supposed to do now? Story 28. It's not much, but here goes. I worked at Cold Stone Creamery one summer and loved the job through and through. Best job ever. I lived in a desert town and people were so stoked to be getting something to cool off that they didn't even complain about long lines or anything. One day a girl came in and ordered an item that had hot fudge. I would always mix in the other ingredients and put the fudge over the top so that it wouldn't melt the ice cream. She requested specifically that I mix in the fudge. I hand her her order and she looks at it and says, it's all melted. I say, I'm sorry, I can remake it and just pour the fudge over the top. She says, please remake it, but still mix in the fudge. I point out we're probably going to be having the same conversation in about 2 minutes about how hot things melt ice cream. But she insists. I redo her order the way she requested. She looks at it again and, predictably enough, complains that it's melted. I say I'm sorry, but I'm unable to keep hot things from making ice cream melt. This witch tells me, no offense, but she would rather have a coworker remake it. I get my manager and explain what's happening. He offers to remake it. You can guess what happened. After the third bowl of melted ice cream doesn't meet her approval, she says she maybe just wants a different item. The manager says he's not giving her a fourth item if she only paid for one, so she demands her money back. He says no, so she calls us both schmucks and storms out. Story 29. At Starbucks, there's a 50-cent upcharge for special milk, including having your drink made with half and half, which is actually a bargain considering how much half and half that is. If he made it himself, he'd go through at least half a gallon of half and a half a week. He'd make a big stink about it before because he was an entitled schmuck and insisted that he shouldn't have to pay for something that we offered for free in the bar, where people usually add a splash of it to their coffee, not 14 ounces. So he usually didn't charge him because it was easier not to. One particular busy morning, a cashier accidentally charged him because things were so insane that she didn't even think about it. 20 minutes after the fact, he stormed the counter to scream at her for charging him. After a 10-minute screaming tirade, she was crying and shoving free drink coupons into his hands just to get him to leave her alone. She was a wreck for hours afterward. She still had to be on register because it was peak, and thanks to his little hissy fit, the line was really long. Everyone was apparently nice to her about it, but she was still upset about it for weeks afterwards. Sadly, the guy didn't get banned. He even had the audacity to come back the next day. He just became one of those guys in the store. Story 30. My mom works property management, and she maintains that her stupidest homeowner was the guy who looked at the payment coupons, which say coupon for payment or payment coupon or something to that effect, and then right below, pay X amount if before date or Y amount if after, and attach this coupon with payment and send to address.
Guy didn't pay for like 3 months and finally got a late notice in. Called my mom asking why he'd gotten it, and she told him that he hadn't made any of his payments. He told her, "But I sent in the coupons." He just saw the word coupon, read none of the other information on it, and assumed that he was getting coupons to waive his fees for his first year of ownership. The man was older, and this was not his first home. Mom actually got in a lot of trouble for this because she asked him, "Are you actually that stupid?" before she could stop herself. She also gets a lot of people who miss their late notices or bills, etc., because they just throw out all of the letters they get from the management company, thinking that they're advertising trash or newsletters or something. Story 31. I worked at a Hollywood video in the town I went to college. The wealthiest guy in town, millionaire plus, made his money in payday loans, literally earning off the backs of people he took advantage of. So his son was a frequent customer and was a real schmuck. He had the same first name as his dad, and he kept taking his dad's credit card to pay for stuff. He let that slip once, and we told him he wasn't allowed to do that anymore. He tried this a couple more times, getting more and more terrible each time. Finally, his dad came in. I let him know that his son couldn't do this, and he went off. Literally the stereotypical, "I could buy you" crap. My son can go out and buy a plane right now in cash. Who the hell do you think you are telling him he can't buy a bag of popcorn? About 5 straight minutes of berating and talking to me like I was trash. When he left, I was so angry I was trembling. I had to go to the back office for a half hour to calm down before I could deal with customers again. I got my petty revenge. I happened to be a shift leader, so I commented in his account and every one of his family members that they'd have to show ID and could never rent with a single cent of late fee in their account. We had a bit of a grace amount. Dude was rich, but by God, I was going to make him account for every $1.07 and do it in public in front of everyone else. Story 32. 8 years ago at the Home Depot, 30-something years old lady is at the self-checkout and wants to buy sod. She's there with a female friend and an older man. Father-like, I mean. Now with sod, we would always receive a daily delivery every morning and sell them until we ran out. But the pallet was outside, so we would always ask the customers whether they had checked if there were any rolls left before charging them, and giving them a slip to be able to leave with the merchandise because we didn't know. So this woman is being condescending about the sod thing. I asked her whether she had confirmed there was sod left before coming to the cash, etc., and she was being like, yeah, I don't care, just sell me some freaking sod. And then start chatting with her friend, and I would repeat the question, but after explaining 3 to 4 times how it worked and we were starting to get impatient towards one another, I ended up just selling her the sod and to hell with it. Well, turns out there was no sod left. They had to come back in and get a refund. Her father then took the extra time to come to me to complain that I sold him sod and there was none left. Blah, 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 and added, "My daughter is crying now, I hope you're happy. Next time, don't be such a witch," and left. What the actual hell? Anyway, I told security. He was never allowed in the store again after that. To this day, I can only imagine this grown woman crying over sod. What the hell? Story 33. I work at a ma-and-pop pizzeria, and people will always yell at me on the phone, complaining that it's too expensive and that they don't feel like paying that price. One time, this guy ordered 2 pizzas and around 50 wings, which comes up to around $90 after taxes. I told him this price, and he said thanks and hung up. No problem. 20 minutes later, his witch of a wife calls back in a condescending tone asking how much the order was again, because she thinks the price her husband understood was too high. I tell her the same price again, and she lost it. She first asked me to break the price down to her. I did and told her the exact price it will add up to. It is during dinner rush, so I really don't have time to deal with her considering I'm the only one taking orders on the 2 phones in this place. She proceeds to scream at me. I proceeded to rant about how I'm in university because I was really offended by this claim, and I don't smoke either, but that's not important. I proceed to reiterate the price until my boss gets on the phone to again confirm the same price I told her, only for her to scream about how she refuses to pay that price. 40 minutes later, and this psychopath is at the front of the pizzeria yelling about how she wants to see the condescending schmuck in the phone and asking for an apology from him. But I just pretended that I wasn't that guy and was still offended that she thought I didn't even graduate high school in the phones. My boss had to kick her out of the store and the husband had to come in and pay the original price. Kinda awful that she was such a witch though, because she was hot as hell. It wasn't surprising that the husband was really geeky looking though. I couldn't imagine anyone putting up with her unless they were desperate. He did seem like such a nice guy. Very sorry for him. Story 34. I still can't even think of this story without laughing. I think I posted this a week or two ago. I worked in a high-end resort. Think Gwyneth Paltrow, Bill Gates, stay here type of high-end. In hotels, you have a lot of guests asking to check in early. You can't guarantee it, obviously because you have a checkout time, usually around 11 or 12. And then you have guests who have late checkout requests or simply refuse to leave the room until whenever the hell they feel like it. This guest comes in, says that he talked to someone who guaranteed him a 9 a.m. check-in. We told him, I'm sorry, but we don't have your room ready yet. We'll be happy to hold on to your luggage, that whole bit. So he goes to the pool, comes back, the room still isn't ready, goes to the bar area, room is still not ready, and so on and so forth. Finally, it's around 12 p.m. at this point, and there's a lobby full of people. His room is still not ready, but we're doing the best we can. He's very upset at this point. I watched him tense up for a moment, and then suddenly, he let out a giant fart. So here's a grown man standing in the middle of a hotel lobby that just went through a multi-million-dollar renovation, where many CEOs, corporate bigwigs, actors, politicians have graced with their presence, who's quite literally resorted to farting until he gets what he wants. The manager had to come out and escort him outside. I'm not sure what happened after that. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.